5-year program to take into consideration the MSRV?
We started with
But when
asking
you
for a freeze of
does
all
that mean that
spending in
you want them to turn off their websites? And suspend is a very strong word. I'm just saying that we want them to amend it to take into consideration the MXV virus. But when you say suspend their research effort, that's a huge, you're asking them to stop, close up shop.
Friendly amendment, instead of saying suspend the research program, suspend implementation of the 5-year program.
That's the entire research program.
There's a lot of good that the CDC does every day and every hour.
And how long is it going to be suspended? We don't know. I mean, that could be a month, a year.
And the implications for funding, just from a federal process standpoint, if a program is suspended, the funds still have to be expended. And so the danger is when a program gets suspended, the funds get diverted somewhere else and then they are never recovered. This has happened in some other programs for, one reason or another. And it's very difficult in very tight budget times to put money back. And, I would just point out, we are already approaching the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year without an appropriation. And a program suspension, like Jim says, is a very, very serious activity that risks future funding altogether.
Look, I want to be firm with the CDC. I want to make sure that they take advantage of knowing about this virus, that they work with the Whittemore, that they can make sure that they all are testing the same way, that they work collaboratively together. I think it's okay to say that. And that would be to amend its 5-year plan to include the MXV virus. Makes to me sense because it's saying very specifically what we want to do. I have CDC funding for AIDS. When you say close their research program down, that could be far-reaching. And I don't think as angry as some have been about the CDC, 99% of the people that work at the CDC work hard and are doing a wonderful job. We all have problems with one person, but to suspend their research program based on our anger about the inappropriate statements made by one person, I think is going too far. I think we won't be listened to, and I want us to be listened to. So I strongly recommend that we say amend instead of suspend.
On our last meeting, we resolved and all the rest of it, a strongly worded statement asking for a change in leadership. And the result was a 5-year plan that doesn't have a change of leadership included. And I can see the frustration of the committees feeling like, okay, you didn't hear that, then let me notch it up a notch.
Well, why don't we say that again? But
Jim, let me withdraw that.
Strongly object?
all right, let's go.
Jim, let me withdraw
Morris,
that.
Let's go. Yeah, all right. I'm a little too emotional about this. Morris, and then Chris.
What I was going to say was previously during the day, when we were talking about the CDC and the 5-year plan, I think Mike and I had this discussion about changing the emphasis of the 5-year plan, or at least putting an emphasis on areas where we think the research should be more emphasized. And I think the recommendations should reflect that type of wordage, and that I think the Secretary would more likely go along with something like that rather than throwing the whole thing out the window. So my friendly amendment would be that we recommend that the CDC emphasize the research dollars and time spent on the XMRV portion of the 5-year plan until such time that it is either proven or disproven.
I don't see. Are you saying they shouldn't do anything about MXV?
No, the emphasis should be on that part of the 5-year plan, because they have a whole 5-year plan, epidemiology and all the things that are going on.
All right, I'm sorry.
But the monies and time should be used judiciously on the other aspects and should be emphasized, the emphasis should be on the viral approach per our recommendation.
Okay. Chris?
I think the concerns are in terms of the prioritization of the 5-year plan, and there's a level of mistrust in the current leadership, and people don't really feel confident that whatever happens with XMRV that it'll be dealt with appropriately. I mean, we don't know what the results are going to be, but they could have major implications for the future of this illness, and we're just a little apprehensive, particularly given public comments about an expectation that it's no big deal. It's not really that relevant.
All right. So do you have any recommendation then, based on that?
I am prepared to listen to a little more discussion.
Okay.
That you know, how do we get that point across without crossing over a line that.
Rebecca?
I'm just going to go back. We had an earlier draft, and I don't want to read it. It's very long. But there are 4 main points that we brought up in our original draft. The first one was that we had asked for this change in leadership. And it wasn't that we didn't get the change in leadership. We didn't even get a response from the CDC on this request for change in leadership officially or publicly. We got it behind the scenes in the lunchroom, which we officially asked for something, and it would have been nice to hear something back publicly. The second one is we wanted to address the case definition. And part of the recommendation that we ended up pulling was there are multiple case definitions for CFS, as I pointed out repeatedly. The CFSAC objects to the use of a flawed case definition known as the empirical case definition. There are currently 2 case definitions, the Fukuto and the Canadian consensus definition, which are internationally utilized, as well as the IACFS pediatric case definition. We encourage the CDC to adopt one of these recommendations or to pursue a change in their diagnostic and research definition. Third, we were concerned about what was said by Dr. Reeves as a spokesperson for the CDC in his statement in saying that he did not expect he could validate the XMR, the retrovirus. I'm just going to call it the retrovirus. And we were concerned that in predicting that you couldn't do something, you would fulfill your own prophecy, not do it, or do it incorrect, not do it to the guidelines that have been established and say, look, I have proof, you were wrong, and just like I told you. And so we had concerns there. And finally, our fourth concern was over the 5-year plan in general. We thought that the CFSAC itself should make up the review panel, plus perhaps more of the 5-year plan before it's implemented. It came out last week. We didn't get it. I know I went on last night and printed it out and read it, and was kind of thunderstruck by some things. But we had a lot of concerns, and so we were trying to figure out how to put all of this simply into a recommendation, which is how we ended up with the recommendation that we had to try to make things clean and simple. But I guess our biggest recommendation is that we have frustration and we don't know exactly how to articulate that we really do think some big things need to change. And I know that behind the scenes we have discussed that, yes, the CDC acknowledges that things need to change and want them to change, but very publicly we need to hear feedback that, yes, we acknowledge things need to change. We need a better case definition. We need a clearer leadership. We need a better public spokesperson for the CDC speaking up, perhaps actually saying things that are scientifically minded and don't undermine other researchers. Because that's a big deal, undermining other researchers.
Well, that's all appropriate. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying you can't say to an agency like CDC that worldwide investigations going on with Q fever and HIV.
So do you like this one more?
Well, but you have to read it.
Jim, that's not what she said. She said, I mean, I'm not
No, I'm
right
agreeing
against
with
it.
what you
She's
just
saying,
said.
No, she's saying to suspend the chronic fatigue program, not the Q fever, AIDS program, or
I'm
anything
just-
else. Don't exaggerate.
What?
And the research program, not everything.
Yeah, and so